be declared around the camp, and a line drawn 2 or 3 kilometers like our side of the camp, and 2 or 3 kilometers the other side of the camp. And if and when the British front line reached that particular line on the map, what would happen was that the German resistance would withdraw without defending themselves, as it were, and we would stop firing at them, and they would withdraw to the other truce line on the German side of the camp, and that we should send in some of our men to take over from the camp commandant and the guards at that camp, and contain the prisoners and stop them from infecting everybody all round. The deal was that when we'd taken over, the SS guards, of which there were supposed to be about 80, would be allowed to march back east out of Germany with their weapons under the truce arrangement. So we'd take over, they would leave. Around this camp, apparently, he said, there was a Hungarian regiment. Now, Hungary was on the side of Germany in the war, but they weren't used in an offensive role very much, as far as I can see. Anyway, there was a regiment there of probably 500 or 600 Hungarian soldiers with their officers, and their duty was to stay outside of the perimeter of this camp and to do guard duty, patrolling the perimeter to make sure that none of the prisoners escaped, and that's what they were there for. And the German officers suggested that they would leave those behind to continue in that way, and that eventually they would be taken prisoner of war by the British. So that was the setup. Now, our commander and the staff thought, well, that sounds a very good idea, and it was agreed. There was a kind of a page of writing, a truce arrangement drawn up and signed, and the German officer went back to his lines, and then that was it. Now, 3 days after that meeting, we did in fact, our forward units did in fact get to that specific line on the map, and true enough, we ceased firing into that area. The German tanks and whatever there all retreated and drew back. So our corps commander nominated one particular colonel of a anti-tank regiment, actually, to go there with a party of men and take over from the commandant of the camp as arranged. So he was detailed to do that. Also detailed was a intelligence unit who had a truck with a loudspeaker van, you know, and with an officer and a couple of men who spoke many languages to help in the takeover and interpret and all that. Then I was selected as the staff officer from the Corps to rendezvous with them at the entrance of the camp and to get a personal account of what was going on, to bring the Colonel Taylor's report back to Corps headquarters and my own impression, and so it was left like that. And that's what actually happened. So on the morning of on the 15th, I, with a jeep and a driver, found my way to this particular map reference. And when I got there, it was just about the time that this CO of this, and about 100 men had arrived, and the loudspeaker truck was already there. And outside the camp, like on the road between the entrance to the camp and the road there, the commandant of the camp, who was a man called Captain Kramer, had lined up with about 40 SS guards, all sort of lined up there, as a reception committee. And so this colonel and I went there and talked to the Kramer, and he was explaining something about the camp and figures, and had a list of stores he wanted a signature for before handing over, and that was going on. At that point in time, we couldn't see into the concentration camp. We were actually on the road outside. We heard rifle fire from inside the camp. And so Taylor said to Kramer, well, what's that? Who's shooting at who? And Kramer said, well, some of the prisoners are rioting to get at the food stores, and some of my men I've left in the camp are keeping order. And, anybody steps out of line, they get shot. This is how it is. So he said, well, that's ridiculous. We better go and have a look. So he took a vehicle and went with me and one or two other officers and the loudspeaker truck. And we drove into the concentration camp itself, which, as I say, was just the other side of the SS Guards premises. And as I mentioned, it's a long road we saw a long road with all these huts. Now, what we saw when we got in there defies all possible description. It was absolutely horrendous. The sights and the smells and the scenes were indescribable. There were dead people all over the place, lying where they died. There were women falling down with children on the ground. It was horrendous. We've never seen anything like it. Of course, nobody had ever seen anything like it. You see these skeletons, people are just skeletons with their blue and white prison uniforms, which you've probably seen, coming up to us and that. And so we drove to the end of the camp where all this was to be seen. And at the very end of the camp, there were some large pits which the Germans had caused some of the prisoners to dig, in which were dumped some thousands of bodies. And because people had been dying, and it was the only thing they could think to do. So we saw that, and we drove back to where everybody was outside the camp again. And the colonel ordered the arrest of all the SS that were there and told them to lay down their arms on the floor, go back to their barracks, and posted guards on the barracks. They're all under arrest. Of course, the few of us had seen this were in a complete state of shock. Nobody had ever experienced anything like or seen anything like that ever before. He then composed a report of what he saw and what he thought was necessary, gave it to me. I drove back to the Corps headquarters and got there late that night, saw the general and the rest of the staff, and they read Taylor's report, and I described what I'd seen, and it was an amazing situation for everybody. Anyhow, the Corps commander and the officers there realized, of course, that immediately we had a major crisis to deal with, and that it boiled down to a medical problem, of course, a water problem, because the water there had been no water in the camp for several days, and a food problem. So he and the headquarters set about collecting up and giving instructions to all around the Corps to get hold of medical units and water supply trucks and food supply lorries sent to the back to bring food forward to go to concentrate on this camp, and allocated about 200 men to stay there, and also to get hold of and to post there what is called a military government detachment. Military government detachments are people, specialist people, who, when you occupy somebody else's territory,